I have 2 weeks left to live. I've said those words out loud a few times now, and they still don't feel real. They hang in the air for a moment like smoke and then disappear. When the doctor said it, there was no dramatic music, no sudden realization like in the movies. Just a quiet room, a file being closed, and a look that said this conversation is over. At first, I thought I'd feel panic, fear, anger. But what came instead was something heavier. Regret. Not sharp regret, slow, suffocating regret. The kind that doesn't scream, it just sits with you. If you're watching this and you're young, you probably think this video isn't really for you. You might think, this is sad, but it's distant. That's exactly how I used to feel when I heard stories like this. I thought death was an old person's problem. I thought serious reflection could wait. I was wrong. Right now, time feels different. Every hour has weight. Every memory walks back into the room uninvited. Things I ignored for years suddenly feel louder than everything I ever achieved. I keep thinking about all the moments I rushed through. All the days I survived instead of lived. I thought I was being productive. I thought I was being responsible. I told myself I was doing what needed to be done. But standing here now at the edge, I can finally see the truth. I wasn't busy living. I was busy avoiding difficult conversations, avoiding change, avoiding the fear of disappointing people. I kept telling myself I had time to fix things, time to rest, time to reconnect, time to become the version of myself I respected. Time turned out to be the one thing I misunderstood the most. This channel is called Young vs Old, and I wish I had taken that contrast seriously earlier in my life. When you're young, you live in questions. You ask, what should I do? Who should I become? How do I win? When you're old, you live in answers shaped by mistakes you can't undo. Old wisdom doesn't come from intelligence. It comes from consequences. I remember listening to older people talk about life lessons, about regret, about not wasting time. I used to think they were exaggerating. I thought they were bitter. I thought that won't be me. I was different. I was smarter. I had plans. Plans don't protect you from yourself. The hardest part isn't that I'm dying soon. The hardest part is realizing how much of my life I postponed. I delayed joy because it felt irresponsible. I delayed honesty because it felt risky. I delayed happiness because I thought it had to be earned later. Later never came. I spent years chasing things that looked impressive from the outside but felt empty when I was alone. I measured my worth by productivity. I measured success by how tired I was. I wore exhaustion like a badge of honor. Nobody told me that burnout doesn't feel like collapse at first. It feels like discipline. It feels like ambition. It feels like doing the right thing, while slowly losing yourself, and you don't notice it happening. That's the dangerous part. If I'm being honest, really honest, I didn't know who I was for most of my life. I knew what I did. I knew what people expected from me. But I didn't know what I wanted when nobody was watching. Young people ask big questions but ignore small signals. Old people realize the small signals were the answers all along. Your body tells you when something is wrong. Your emotions tell you when something is missing. Your silence tells you when you're betraying yourself. I ignored all three. There's something cruel about clarity arriving so late. You suddenly understand what mattered, who mattered, and why the things you stressed about were never worth the cost. You see how many mistakes were optional, not forced, not inevitable, just repeated because they were familiar. I'm not telling you this to sound dramatic. I'm telling you because I would give anything to hear this message earlier and actually listen. If you still think you have unlimited time, that's normal. I did too. But don't confuse possible time with guaranteed time. They are not the same. I don't want sympathy. I want this moment to mean something beyond me. If my ending can interrupt your autopilot even for a few minutes, then it matters. This isn't about fear of death. It's about fear of wasting life. And if you're uncomfortable right now, good. That discomfort is awareness knocking. Don't ignore it like I did. I want to tell you something that took me most of my life to understand. When you're young, advice feels heavy. It feels like pressure. It feels like someone trying to slow you down when all you want is speed. I remember thinking that older people talked about regret because they didn't have anything else left to talk about. Now I understand they weren't warning me because they were weak. They were warning me because they were late. The truth is, youth and age don't live in the same world. Young people wake up thinking about possibilities. Old people wake up thinking about memories. One is exciting, the other is honest. When I was younger, I believed life would eventually make sense. That one day, all the effort, all the sacrifices, all the stress would line up into something meaningful. I thought clarity was a reward for patience. It's not. Clarity comes from paying attention. And I didn't. I followed the path that looked right. Not because it felt right, but because it was familiar, respected, and approved by others. I told myself I was being mature, responsible, smart. But deep down, there was always a quiet discomfort, a feeling that something was missing. I ignored it because it didn't scream. It just whispered. And whispers are easy to silence when life is loud. Work was loud. Expectations were loud. Comparison was loud. So I stayed busy. Busy is a very convincing lie. It makes you feel important while slowly disconnecting you from yourself. This is something young people don't hear enough. You don't drift into a bad life. You slowly accept one. I didn't wake up miserable. I just stopped asking questions. I stopped checking in with myself. I stopped noticing when my days all started feeling the same. I told myself, this is adulthood. This is how it's supposed to feel. Tired, distracted, numb. It's not. I also believed that struggle automatically meant meaning. That if something was hard, it must be worth it. That belief kept me stuck in places that drained me, emotionally, mentally, physically. Old wisdom sounds simple because it is. The problem is simplicity feels boring when you're young. You want complexity. You want intensity. You want proof. Regret is proof. I spent too much time proving things to people who were never going to be satisfied. Bosses who replaced me without a second thought. Strangers who admired a version of me that wasn't real. Systems that rewarded output, not humanity. I forgot that life isn't an audition. You don't get extra points for suffering silently. You don't get medals for neglecting yourself. You don't get your time back for being loyal to things that never cared about you. One of the biggest mistakes I made was thinking that growth had to hurt all the time. I confused discomfort with damage. I ignored the signs that my life was shrinking instead of expanding. If something keeps making you smaller, it's not shaping you, it's erasing you. I wish someone had told me that earlier. I also avoided asking for help. I thought independence meant handling everything alone. I thought vulnerability was weakness. So I carried everything myself: stress, fear, pressure, doubt. What I didn't realize is that isolation doesn't protect you. It hardens you. And hardened people don't feel much, not joy, not connection, not peace. Young people often ask, how do I avoid failure? Old people wish they had asked, what am I sacrificing to avoid it? I sacrificed presence. I sacrificed relationships. I sacrificed moments that never come back. And the scariest part, at the time, it didn't feel like sacrifice. It felt normal. That's how life slips through your hands quietly. If you're listening to this and thinking, this sounds familiar, don't panic. Awareness isn't condemnation. It's an invitation. You don't need to fix everything today. You just need to stop lying to yourself about what's working and what isn't. I waited too long to do that. I used to believe that regret comes from doing the wrong things. Now I know it mostly comes from not doing the right ones, the honest conversations, the brave changes, the uncomfortable decisions. Those are the things that build a life you don't have to escape from. I didn't learn that until it was almost over. And that's why I'm telling you this now. There's a memory that keeps coming back to me these days. I was sitting at work late one evening, staring at a screen I could barely focus on anymore. My phone buzzed. It was my father calling. I looked at it and let it ring. Not because I didn't care, not because I was angry. I just thought I'll call him back later. Later never happened. That moment doesn't hurt because of what it was. It hurts because of what it represents. 1,000 small choices where I chose convenience over connection, productivity over presence, tomorrow over today. This is how regret really forms. Not through big disasters, but through tiny decisions that seem harmless in the moment. I thought I was being responsible. I thought I was building something important. I didn't realize I was teaching people how to live without me. I missed weddings because of deadlines. I missed laughter because I was tired. I missed silence because I was always distracted. I thought being there physically was enough. I didn't understand that being present is an entirely different thing. Young people ask, why do relationships fade? Old people know they're starved. Not from lack of love, from lack of attention. Another mistake I made was believing I could outgrow my problems without facing them. I thought time would soften things. That maturity would magically fix my insecurities, my fears, my anger. It doesn't. Whatever you avoid when you're young follows you when you're old, just heavier. I avoided confronting myself. I avoided asking why I was always restless, why achievements felt empty, why I felt disconnected even when surrounded by people. Instead of listening, I kept moving. I also underestimated how much my environment was shaping me. I stayed around people who normalized dissatisfaction, who complained constantly but never changed anything, who mocked dreams while secretly resenting their own choices. I didn't realize that energy is contagious. You become like the people you spend time with, not because you want to, but because humans adapt to survive socially. I adapted into someone I barely recognized. One of the most painful realizations I've had is this: I lived more for potential than for reality. I loved the idea of who I could be more than the person I was actually becoming. I kept telling myself stories: I'll slow down soon. I'll reconnect later. This is just a phase. Life doesn't move in phases. It moves at it fast. I ignored my health too. Not dramatically. Just carelessly. Skipped sleep. Ate poorly. Treated stress like fuel. I thought my body was loyal. I didn't realize it was keeping score. Young bodies forgive. Old bodies remember. I can trace so many of my current problems back to years of neglect I dismissed as temporary. Another hard truth: I was afraid to disappoint people. So I disappointed myself instead. I said yes when I meant no. I stayed quiet when I needed to speak. I chose peace on the surface over honesty underneath. That kind of peace is expensive. You pay for it with resentment, fatigue, and a quiet sense of self-betrayal. I didn't understand that every time you ignore your truth, it doesn't disappear. It waits. People talk a lot about making mistakes, but nobody talks about the mistake of never choosing, of letting life happen by default, of being reactive instead of intentional. I didn't ruin my life with one bad decision. I faded out of it with thousands of small ones. And now, with so little time left, those small moments feel enormous. I wish I had taken more risks when the stakes were lower. I wish I had allowed myself to fail loudly instead of succeed quietly in places that didn't matter to me. Fear convinced me that safety was smarter. It never told me the cost. The cost was depth. The cost was meaning. The cost was joy. If you're young and you're listening to this, understand something important: mistakes are not the enemy. Avoidance is. Mistakes teach. Avoidance delays. And delayed lessons come with interest. I paid that interest my whole life. This isn't self-pity, it's clarity. And clarity, this late, is both a gift and a punishment. I can see exactly where I went wrong. I just can't go back. You still can. That's why this matters. There's something I need you to understand, and it took me almost my entire life to see it clearly. Regret doesn't come rushing in all at once. It arrives quietly, almost politely. It waits until you finally slow down, until the noise fades, until distractions stop working, and then it asks questions you can't ignore anymore. When people talk about life lessons, they often turn them into slogans. Follow your passion, live in the moment, no regrets. Those phrases sound good, but they don't tell you how regret actually forms. Regret forms when your values and your actions don't match. I spent years telling myself I cared about family, health, honesty, freedom, but my daily choices told a different story. I chose work over rest, approval over truth, comfort over courage. You don't lose yourself overnight. You trade yourself away, piece by piece. One of the biggest lies I believed was that I would feel ready before making hard changes. Ready to leave. Ready to speak up. Ready to start over. I thought confidence came first. It doesn't. Action comes first. Confidence follows later. I waited for a version of myself that never arrived, because that version is built through action, not thought. If you're young, this matters more than you realize. You don't need perfect clarity to move forward. You need honesty. Brutal honesty about what is draining you, what excites you, and what you're tolerating out of fear. Tolerance is dangerous. You can tolerate a bad job, a one-sided relationship, a life that feels wrong. You can tolerate it for years. And one day you wake up tired in a way sleep can't fix. Another thing I wish I had understood earlier is that time doesn't heal what you refuse to address. It just covers it up. Unspoken resentment doesn't disappear. It hardens. Unexpressed grief doesn't fade. It settles into your body. I carried so much emotional weight without realizing it. I called it stress. I called it adulthood. I called it responsibility. It was unresolved pain. Young people often think wisdom comes from learning more, from reading more, from knowing more. But the most important lessons come from unlearning. Unlearning the need to impress. Unlearning the belief that rest is laziness. Unlearning the idea that your worth is tied to output. I never unlearned those things in time. Here's something else no one warns you about. Success can trap you just as easily as failure. When something looks good from the outside, you feel guilty questioning it. You feel ungrateful wanting more. So you stay, you adapt. You tell yourself it's fine, until fine becomes your entire life. I thought stability was the goal. I didn't realize stagnation can feel stable too. The days blur together, the dreams get quieter, the curiosity fades. You don't notice it leaving, you just notice it's gone. If I could go back, I would ask myself one question regularly. Is this life expanding me or shrinking me? Not easier or harder, not safer or riskier, expanding or shrinking. The answer is usually obvious, we just don't like what it implies. Another painful truth, I avoided discomfort so long that discomfort became my default. I got used to being slightly unhappy, slightly anxious, slightly disconnected. That's a dangerous place to live because nothing feels urgent enough to change. Urgency only arrived when it was too late. I also wish I had understood that you don't need permission to live differently. No one is coming to approve your choices. No one will tap you on the shoulder and say, "Now it's time to be brave." You either decide or time decides for you. Time decided for me. If this sounds heavy, it's because it is. But it's also hopeful because you're hearing it before the ending. You still have leverage. You still have flexibility. You still have mornings that haven't happened yet. Don't underestimate that. The saddest thing I've realized isn't that I made mistakes. It's that I ignored my own awareness. I knew when something was wrong. I felt it. I just didn't act on it. Intuition is quiet, but it's persistent. If you keep ignoring it, it doesn't stop speaking. You just stop listening. I stopped listening for a long time. Learn from that, please. This isn't about living perfectly. It's about living consciously. Making choices you can stand behind. Building a life that doesn't require escape. I didn't do that. You still can. Now that I'm this close to the end, something strange has happened. The noise is gone. All the things I used to worry about, money, status, opinions, comparisons, they feel irrelevant now. Not unimportant, just powerless. They don't carry weight anymore. What carries weight are faces, voices. Moments I rush through. I think about conversations I never finished. Apologies I delayed. Love I assumed was understood without being expressed. I thought people knew. I didn't realize love needs to be spoken, not assumed. Silence is not neutral. Silence chooses distance. If you take one thing from this entire story, let it be this: don't assume you'll get another chance to say what matters. Life is generous, but it's not obligated. I spent years believing I could always fix things later. That relationships were flexible. That time would make space. Time doesn't make space. You do. There's a moment that keeps replaying in my mind. Sitting alone at night, realizing that my achievements can't sit next to me. They can't hold my hand. They can't remind me who I was before the world shaped me into something convenient. Only people can do. And I treated people like they were renewable. Young people often think legacy is about being remembered. It's not. Legacy is about who feels the absence when you're gone, and why. That question terrifies me more than death itself. I don't want you to think this message is about guilt. Guilt paralyzes. This is about responsibility. Responsibility gives power back. You don't control how long you live, but you do control how present you are while you're alive. If you're young and confused, that's okay. Confusion means you're still searching. What scares me isn't confusion, it's numbness. It's settling into a life that doesn't ask anything from you except endurance. Don't build a life you need distractions to survive. Start small. That's how real change happens. Call someone you've been postponing. Sleep when your body asks. Say no without explaining yourself. Say yes to things that scare you for the right reasons. None of that requires permission. I used to think I needed a dramatic moment to change. A breakdown. A sign, a crisis. This is your sign, not because I'm special. Because my story is common. Painfully common. Hospitals are full of people who thought they had time. If you're still watching this, don't let it end here. Reflection without action turns into sadness. Take something from this and apply it today, not tomorrow. Not when things slow down, they won't. Subscribe to Young vs Old if you want more conversations like this, not motivational noise, not fake positivity, just honest perspective from both sides of life. But more importantly, subscribe to your own life. Pay attention to it. Protect it. Respect it. I don't know exactly how my last days will feel, but I know this: I don't want my ending to be meaningless. If my regret can save you from your own, then this mattered. Don't wait until life forces you to slow down. Slow down on purpose. Don't wait until people leave to appreciate them. Show up now. Don't wait until your body breaks to listen to it. Care for it early. I wasted too much time believing later was guaranteed. It's not. You're still here. Use that